Welcome once again to Vlog. I am your host. Today, I'll be taking a look at Scarlet Nexus on my PlayStation 5. It's also available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and Windows PC. If you have an Apple Macintosh like me, you'll just have to play it on a console because it won't work on your Macintosh. I chose the PlayStation 5 version over the Xbox Series X due to the DualSense features. From what I can gather, the PlayStation 5 has slightly faster load times and the Xbox has slightly better frame rates. I didn't notice anything wrong with the frame rates on the demo version, so I picked it up on PlayStation 5. I also didn't notice any problems on the main release. Scarlet Nexus is a hard title to review. It has all of the elements of a cult classic, but that's not always a good thing when it comes to appealing to a wider audience. It took me 31 hours to beat the game. I went through the game at a fairly leisurely pace, and I did a whole lot of the side content. I did all of the side story missions, I maxed out all of the weapons, and I unlocked all of the hideout stuff that I could. There's also some optional fetch quests. I collected all the quests, but I only completed about a third of them. According to How Long to Beat, the average playthrough is about 25 hours. The platinum probably takes somewhere around 60 hours to complete, but I'm not exactly sure. So there is a whole lot of content here. I think there will be a group of people who really like it despite its flaws, while I think there will be another group of people who get bored with it pretty quickly. Just looking at the raw Metacritic scores, it kind of confirms my suspicion because it has reviewers who have rated it between 60 all the way to 100 with an average score of an 80, and I don't think either side is necessarily wrong in that assessment. This could be your game of the year. It could also be seen as below average, or it could be seen somewhere in between depending on your preferences. I'll do my best to describe the game as best I possibly can. Personally, I fall somewhere in between. Scarlet Nexus is a bit of a slow burn. It takes quite a while for you to unlock all of your abilities, and it takes a long time for the characters to warm up to each other. However, by the end, when the game is firing on all cylinders, it gets ridiculously fun. The combat is super frantic, the environments go from bland to extremely creative, and the characters really come into their own. The last stage in particular is just really good. It's just a shame that it takes so long for it to get there. One thing that I really appreciate is that you're basically getting two games in one. At the beginning of the game, you pick between one of two characters, either an anime boy named Yuito or an anime girl named Kasane. Each character has their own story. Although they reuse the same maps and other assets, you don't really need to play through both stories, but it's still a nice option to have. I played as Kasane. She was adopted by the wealthy Randall family, but she was never really acknowledged by her new parents. Naomi is her adopted sister, and they're both extremely close. When they grow up, they join their country's military, which is called the Other Suppression Force, or OSF, to protect humanity from otherworldly monsters called the Others. The Others consume the brains of humans, which is also the source of humanity's powers. Kasane is also enlisted in a pilot program, which will help to increase her powers, but it also may drive her completely insane. As part of the OSF, they meet the other main character named Yuito. Kasane doesn't really care about him, but her sister thinks he's cute, so at the beginning, the only thing Kasane is thinking about is whether or not Yuito is good enough to date her sister. After tragedy strikes, Kasane and Yuito are on the other sides of a major conflict, which sees Kasane go on a crazy adventure to save the world and those closest to her, even if it means killing the boy that her sister likes to do it. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but Kasane is obviously the better character here. She's a marvelous murder ballerina who twirls around, defeating her enemies with her throwing knives, while Yuito is your standard sword user. I'm sure Yuito users probably feel a bit differently here. The story is completely bonkers, but in a good way. There's a lot of it told by optional visual novel sections that can increase your abilities in the game. At the start of it, I really didn't care about these sections all that much, but by the end, I was really into it. The problem here is that the characters are just so wooden at the start, but they do get better later on. Scarlet Nexus is an action role-playing game. It uses a pretty unique combat system where you can borrow the powers of your teammates and use all sorts of crazy powers. It's a light dungeon crawler, so it encourages you to explore the dungeons, to find all the things, and kill monsters to make yourself stronger. The combat did take me a while to get used to it, but I started to really enjoy it once I got the hang of it. Especially when you unlock all of the different types of powers and recruit a full team. The combat system starts pretty basic and gets more hectic later on. Later on in the game, you can enter this berserker type mode where you can do some pretty heavy damage, but it comes at a cost. The combat is probably the best part of the game, but it just takes a while to get there. Like, you start out being able to only borrow one power, then later on you can use two at the same time, and then near the end of the game you can use 4 powers at the same time. By the end of the game, you're just this crazy powerhouse that could do all sorts of crazy stuff. So you start out with just being able to attack with your throwing knives and throwing these objects at monsters. Then you get the ability to share one power like time bending, invisibility, electricity, and double damage. Then you get this low-level berserker power for a short period of time to throw more stuff. So by the end, you have 9 powers to choose from. But you can use 4 powers at the same time. So, for example, you can time bend, do triple the damage, flame attack, and teleport all at the same time while you throw all sorts of stuff at your enemies. Then you get instant kills, which auto recharges all of your abilities that you are currently using to do even more damage before going into this crazy berserker mode to do all sorts of crazy damage while your teammates give you additional time since you're just such good friends at this point. I really dug the combat. It just took way too long for it to unlock all the good stuff. Graphically, I wasn't a huge fan of it at the beginning, but the environments do get more interesting later on. I don't find the Rust aesthetic all that appealing, but that really is more of a matter of personal taste. However, I did find myself warming up to it later on, and the last few sections are just really, really cool. I just wish they would have been more creative from the start instead of just saving it all for the end. Many of the environments all look the same. which can be a bit of a problem. The game is a light dungeon crawler, so trying to remember where you went when all the rooms look the same makes it a little different to find all the stuff in a particular dungeon. I also would have liked to have seen a little greater enemy variety. They do eventually add some basic puzzles based on the other characters' powers, but they're all pretty easy. The characters also have a tendency to shout out the answer to the puzzle as soon as you get to it. There's also certain sections you can't access without some other powers that you unlock later on in the game. And eventually you do get a few light platforming sections near the end of the game. The experience playing it on the PlayStation 5 was really good. The load times were pretty much non-existent, and I enjoyed the haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers. The resistance when you're throwing stuff at enemies feels really good. It's definitely an upgraded PS4 game on the PlayStation 5, but I think the additional features are good. However, I don't think they did the greatest job at optimizing it for the DualSense controller because the game seems to drain the battery more quickly than in other games. This only became a problem for me near the end, but the motors in the controller sound like they're activating at random times. I enjoyed my time with Scarlet Nexus, and I was willing to overlook many of its flaws due to its original concepts, but in many ways it felt like a rough draft of a game with even greater potential. Regardless of my thoughts and other reviews, I think it's at least worth checking out the demo because I think it does a pretty good job at showcasing the combat basics. Scarlet Nexus is a really good game if you're willing to give it a chance. The combat is ridiculously fun and I enjoyed the story. I'm really glad a game like this exists and hopefully they're able to expound on these concepts in a sequel. A big problem that I have with a lot of games today is that they don't try anything new, and Scarlet Nexus certainly tries something new here. It may be a little rough around the edges at times, but I thought it was a pretty good time. I also think that I should mention that the New Game Plus is only available after you beat the final boss. Maybe they'll do something about it in a future update, but I think it's worth mentioning since I still have to beat the final boss again if I want to see Yuito's story with my clear saved file. I paid the full $60 for the game on the PlayStation Network. I didn't get any special discounts. I pre-ordered the game, but I didn't get the pre-order bonuses for some reason. I felt it was more than fair for the price, although it should be mentioned that the physical version has already went on sale by the time of this review. So these are just my thoughts and feelings about the game. It shouldn't be considered an endorsement and your experience may differ. So if you played the game, did you play as the murder ballerina Kasane or the standard sword user Yuito? Did you enjoy it or was it just not for you? For the Yuito fans, do you think I should give him a chance? I'm really curious what you guys think. Anyway, I think I rambled on long enough. I want to thank you for watching my video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.